Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel and editorial discussion for 5th May 2022. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss an editorial from Observer Research Foundation online. The editorial speaks about the tour of duty scheme, certain issues related with it and certain positives about the scheme. We will go a little beyond to understand what is the intention of government while it introduces a scheme like this, the armed forces reforms. If you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments and shares. Let's discuss. Indian Army is one of those armies which has got one of the highest number of personal presence. Right behind the Chinese Army and the USA Army, do we have 12 lakh personnel with us, and these people are active duty personals in the armed forces, army itself. So huge number of working staff in the army. Now what we require for the modern times are automated machines, artificial intelligence. We want cyber space capabilities. We want those kind of personals who can operate on the land, water and air all together. Integrated battle groups need to be created. We also need more personnel who can be on the war field rather than being the support staff. That is called as having better teeth to tail ratio. And for that we will have to curb the high expenditures. You know why? Because India is one of those countries which again spends very high amount of money on expenditures in the defense. Third largest after USA and China. USA expending 10 times us, China expending 4 times us, and India expending 2.4% of GDP. That is around 70 lakh crore. Right? If you want to compare, you can look at Pakistan expending around 7 times less than us. All right, moving ahead. See, the idea is to modernize our defense forces, to make them more flexible, agile, and high tempo operations should be able to be conducted by them. So government says we will conduct reforms like we will not be having our own repair systems. So based workshops and all the supplies, they will be outsourced. Similarly, if we have men who are patrolling the borders, we will have machines patrolling. We will decrease the workforce strength. You know why we want to decrease the workforce strength? Look at this particular table. Because we spend approximately 75% of the total defense budget only on salaries and pensions. This is where government says we will introduce the tour of duty scheme, because of in which only 3 year a person has to serve in the mid 20s, and after that they will retire from the service. No pension to be paid, salary to be paid only for 3 years, and after that they will be said tata bye bye, you can work in other organizations. Yes, government will have some ways in which it tries to work out their future as well, but let's talk more about this first. And the rest of the amount that is being spent, only 25% being spent on modernization of the defense or maintenance and other expenditures. What is required is to reverse this ratio and have more expenditure in the modernization and lesser expenditure for salary and pensions. This is why government says we want to introduce the tour of duty scheme. Looks to be quite interesting for non-commissioned officers, for the other ranks and people who are the soldiers in the armed forces right now, not for officers right now. So this is where let us understand what are the issues of tour of duty scheme. When we train a military personnel how to use a weapon or how to throw a grenade, these people are those people who are highly trained in their skill, and having them retire at an early age, this might lead to unemployed yet arms trained men, and this could lead to creation of militia which is unemployed, and this is not very good for the nation. Similarly, when we want to retire the personnel at an early age, the slogans like Naam, Namak, Nishan, that means commitment, fidelity, all this, what is the significance of this? What will be the motivation of people to join armed forces? We also want to have an all India recruitment of the through the tour of duty scheme. Now, right now, the recruitments happen through regiments like Rajput, Sikh, Jat, Gurkha, Gadwali, Maratha, Kumawi, etc. And there is a level of commitment and fidelity in persons from specific regions, right, which are known as the warring communities. But then this commitment will decrease down in times to come, right? The this particular article also says that there have been times where we have seen, in this is the independence time 1947, communal riots happened in the country during the time of independence, and it attributes the increased intercommunal violence to the armed forces personnel present at the border districts. It says that since the number of armed forces personnel were high in those border districts during 1947, the civilian population, they were into more of the intercommunal violence. So this is where This is the reason that we cannot have these kind of forces unemployed for a longer time, right? So another argument that is given is the finances that is spent on an officer who is serving in 10 to 14 years. The amount spent is cumulative 5 to 7 crores, but if they serve only for 3 years, the amount spent will be less than 1 crore rupees. This is all because of the increased salaries and pensions and other training liabilities, etc. This all will reduce. Now this is where the opposing argument is also presented. Yes, tour of duty scheme seems to be good when we look at the finances of the government, when we look at automation and increasing capabilities, when we look at other issues. But then, look at this. Is there any evidence of men being trigger happy? That means they are just shooting around all the places. No, these 1947 situation were a different situation of a different time. This is not specifically about intercommunal violence. Another issue is that if we have the unemployed men, can we not transfer these unemployed men to other forces? For example, Central Armed Police Force, CAPF, or the State Police Force, because state police force lacks the presence of the armed personals. Right now the population present in the country is less than 200 police personals for 1 lakh civilian population, and what is mandated is 222 according to United Nations itself. So we can transfer these people and make them serve in these services. Now this is where the article concludes by saying that a few things have to be noted. One, over militarization should not happen. For example, right now Central Armed Police Force has got over militarization, less trained people, and equipments are not a state of the art. There's low morale of on the force. So this needs to be countered whenever we want to shift the workforce from one armed forces to the other. The second, duration must be looked at. We are training these men for such men and young women for such these only 3 years. We must utilize them for better time, and they must also feel secure in the services. And there should be a smoother transition. That means smoother transition means there should be assured employment and assured guarantee in the future as well. Right now the workforce in India armed forces is around 12 to 14 lakh, and the idea is to reduce this percentage by 25 to 30% corresponding to advanced military. All the other countries also are reducing these kind of extra expenditures. Now let us quickly understand little more, which is the most interesting part of this discussion. Now have a look. If you look at the total number of or proportion of expenditure in the capital outlay is around 28% of the total budget. Now when you saw the expenditure that happened in the armed forces, the capital outlay last year was around 1.5 lakh crore, and the total expenditure on the armed forces was 5.5 lakh crore. So this comes to around 30% of the total expenditure. Now the year when you see little downside in capital outlay, expenditure in the armed defense forces, we see a bulge in the pensions. These are the 2014, 15, 16 times when the government had to bear the increased brunt of one rank, one pension, right? So the proportional increase in salaries and pensions will be a proportional decrease in the capital outlay. So you can see how counterbalancing is working and how there is lesser modernization because of issues like the expenditure in payment. And this is the defense expenditure as a proportion of GDP. The defense expenditure as a proportion of GDP has declined over time. We were spending around 20%, and now this is almost 12%, 13% of the budget. Let me remind you, 40 lakh crore is what we spend, and if you are spending 5 lakh crore, this is 1/8, amounting to around 12%. So this is very much clear. Out of the three armed forces that we have, in expenditure of army, we spend 60% of the budget, 14% in navy, and 20% in the air force. So navy needs to have more budgetary spending, looking at the kind of naval engagements, trade, freedom of ocean and seas that we look at. Also, one important thing, see, we need to cut down on the armed forces, absolutely. But then you would also be seeing news around which speak about that our armed forces is falling short of around 2 lakh personnel. 2 lakh personnel, yes, that is absolutely true. We are falling short of the numbers. These the numbers are of 2017, and during 2019, 20, 20 and 22, all these times we have not had any recruitment in the armed forces. More so, we are also having an attrition of around 60,000. This is because of superannuation. People retire, and 60,000 personnel retire every year. So we are falling short of 2 lakh forces, but we need to further cut down maybe a 1.5 lakh forces. This is what the experts estimate, so that we are able to become a very lean and swift warring machine, and reduce expenditures of 75% on the budget on pensions and salaries. So if we cut down on expenditure, we will have more outlay for capital expenditure and modernization of defense forces. So this is how you should counter a question if posed on the modernization of the armed forces. Now, if you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments, and shares. And a quick question for you people: mention 4 issues constraining modernization of Indian armed forces. If you have some questions and doubts, please put them down in the comment section and I will ensure to get back to you. Thank you for watching.